Hello everybody and welcome back to this section. And in the previous video we saw how we can actually create a program and use it in order to discover some hidden directories that we might find interesting. We saw on our Metasploitable a directory called passwords.txt where we actually managed to find some of the passwords. Now of course that directory is purposely made in order for you to test programs like this and find it. On the real websites it is not likely that you will encounter something so significant to the attacker as a password list, but you never know. Also, you might find some valuable information, such as some versions of software running there, some additional files, some Tomcat files, PHP files, and basically anything that could be useful for your future attacks. Now, since we saw how we can actually create a directory brute forcer or directory finder, however you want to call it, let us see what we need to do in order to be able to do the same with the subdomains. Now let us nano our brute forcer, or let us copy our directories.py into subdomains.py. Now right here we should have both of these programs which will be the same, so let us right now, let me just close this. Oops. Let me nano subdomains.py. And right here we have our program which we coded in the previous video, which is basically the same as the actual directories.py. So what we have to do right now is change just a few things in order to get this to be a simple subdomains finder. So actually there is only one thing that we need to change, I believe. It is this part right here. So you can see that when we search for a directory, we search for something like this. So we find a website, let's say it is google.com, then we add a slash, and then we brute force any directory, admin, password, and so on. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to use google.com, for example, and we're searching for a subdomain which can be, for example, a country, so for example us.google.com or something like that. So what a subdomain is this prefix to the actual website right here. It helps us discover some different pages on the website that we maybe weren't able to discover without this. So let us see what we need to do in order to change that. We will not change the request function right here, as it is returning the URL that we parse to that function, so nothing really here we should actually change. We accept the connection error, which means that we cannot connect to the specified subdomain, which is good. We've prompt the target for the actual URL, which is also something that we won't change. The file to open, and this is something that you can change if you want to. I will just leave it on the common.txt. Or you can actually do something like this, so file underscore name, and you can just do something like this right here, so file underscore name equals raw underscore input, and you can prompt the actual user for the file that they want to use to brute force, so enter file to use, and just close the brackets right here. And then we parse the actual file into this function right here. So let me just go down here and let me see what else we need to change. Now this is something that you don't really need to import if you don't want to, but just in case, let us make this program mostly user friendly so we can continue with the other stuff now. We will not change anything right here. The full URL is the most important thing we have to change. So first of all, the target URL should go after the actual subdomain, so we will just add everything we need before the target URL. So what we're going to do is we're going to type here word, which is our line, just stripped from everything that might actually present a problem. So for example, if we had a line which is passwords in our actual file, and it had a new line character, we would get something like this, which really doesn't exist. Whoops, google.com. What we want to do is we want to actually navigate this to the same line, so that's why we strip everything from the unnecessary things. So right here we use a word plus, then we will add a string, And in between these double quotes, we will just specify a dot, which will actually represent the subdomain itself. Then to this dot, we will add our target URL, and we will perform the actual response or the request function and returning the actual response to the response variable. We check whether that response is none or if it is actually received. If it is received, we will print not discovered directory, we will print subdomain or discovered subdomain at this link, and then we will print the full URL. So let us see how this will work. First of all, let me just run our Metasploitable, so we can actually use it in order to test this on something. Now this is something that you can actually test on the other websites as well. It's nothing really dangerous to do. You are just discovering different subdomains for that specified website. It's not like you're brute forcing a username and password. This is something that can help you actually enumerate and find out more different pages for that specific website. Now, of course, if you are running a brute force attack on the username and login credentials, you are not allowed to use this on any other website unless it's actually in basically normal terms, such as, for example, sending 3 or 4 passwords just to check whether your program exists, whether your program works well. If you run this with a password list of 10,000 passwords, then that is something that you can consider illegal, so you shouldn't really do that. Let us see whether our Metasploitable opened. Okay, I have config the IP address 192.168.1.5. Let me just find my actual arrow from the mouse. Okay, so had a little bit of problem finding my mouse there. Let me just do this once again and tap this down. Okay, so let us try to run our program, subdomains.py, enter target URL 192. Yeah, we actually need to specify only the IP address, since you remember we actually added the HTTP in the code itself, so 192.168.1.5, and then the file to use will be the same command.txt. Doesn't really matter. This is only just for us to actually test the program itself. Now, if it discovers any subdomain, that is good. If it doesn't discover, doesn't really matter. What matters is that our program works. We don't get any error. We actually try to perform the request on these certain pages. It's just that currently we cannot really seem to find any on the actual 192.168.1.5, which is our Metasploitable. It could be also that we are using a wrong password list, or not password, the subdomains list. Now, what you want to do when you're running these types of attacks, or enumeration attacks, if however you want to call it, you want to find the actual directory. You want to find an actual list that contains something that could possibly be a subdomain or a directory. There is not really a point in running this attack with a password list such as the rocky.txt, which is mainly focused on the actual account passwords. You want to actually have a real password list for these types of attacks. So for example, there is a subdomain news, org, something like that. You want to have all of those in your list once you run this. So let me just check out. This is not really finding anything, so let us just quit it right now. Okay. Let me get the passlist.txt. Yeah, okay, this is nothing really interesting for us. Let's go to user share word lists. Perhaps we can actually find something right here that could be rather useful to us. So let me go to dirbuster. Okay, nothing really here for us, I believe. Yeah, nothing here for us. cd to dirb ls. Let us see right here whether we have something interesting. Extensions command.txt. Let me see what that is. Okay, so these are just extensions for some of the files, nothing really interesting as well. Let's cd to others, cd to ones. We're basically just trying to find something that could be a good actual list for this type of attack. So let us just locate subdomain and let's see if we find anything. Link some subdomains.txt. Okay, so something in Metasploit framework. So user share Metasploit framework data word lists, and here we should have some subdomain word list. Let me just find where it is. We saw it in the locate function, so let's just grab ls and then grab subdomain, and here is our list. So let us cat the actual list just to see what it has. Well, okay, oh, it's a link subdomains.txt and nothing really useful for us there as well. So subdomain, let me see whether there is something else instead of this actual list that we have right here. Yeah, okay, so there really isn't. Maybe even there is, it's just not called like this. It doesn't even matter. Basically, you can use any password list you want, whether it is made for the subdomains or not. For now on, we will just skip to the next tutorial. Not really, there's no really point in actually continuing to find a password list. What matters is that our program works and you can use it for your own needs. So hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!